Schultz that if Russia invaded, Nord Stream 2 would be no more. And Chancellor Schultz said that there was no disagreement.
If Russia, so did that work? I find your answer astonishing.
A pipeline decision in 2021, a war in Ukraine, and a clash over Hamas. One senator says it all led to disaster. Stay with us to see how this showdown unfolded.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Woodhouse. Position as sanctions coordinator is supposed to oversee and implement sanctions in an objective and nonpartisan way. In examining your record during the Biden administration, I've become concerned that you are singularly unqualified for this position. Far too often, the Biden administration has politicized sanctions. This administration has used sanctions as a bludgeon against countries and international figures whom Democrats don't like, while ignoring much more significant violations by those embraced by the global populist left. You have sanctioned our friends and ignored our enemies. And the mess on the global stage is a direct result of that. Let's start by talking about Israel and Hamas. Hamas has launched repeated wars against Israel during the Biden administration, injuring, kidnapping, murdering thousands of people, including dozens of Americans. They know they cannot defeat Israel militarily, so their fundamental strategy is to use Palestinian human shields to generate Palestinian civilian casualties, and therefore international outrage to damage Israel. To counter that strategy, in 2018, I authored and secured into law mandatory sanctions against Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists for using human shields. In May of 2021, Hamas launched yet another war against Israel, once again using human shields. Mr. Woodhouse, how many Hamas terrorists did you sanction for using human shields during this conflict?
Thank you for that question, Senator. During the Biden administration, we have released multiple rounds of sanctions targeting both Hamas and its financial networks in the region and globally, seeking to continue to degrade its ability to operate and perpetrate these awful crimes against Israel.
So I understand you want to make a generic statement. I want to ask the question again because it's precise. How many Hamas terrorists did you sanction for using human shields during the 2021 conflict?
With respect to Shield Act sanctions, I'll have to get back to you. I don't have that number currently.
Well, I can help you on it. That number was 0. You did not sanction anybody. And that's why you don't have the number, because there's not an answer to give. All right, let's move forward. Hamas sanctions, they use human shields. You've got a mandatory obligation to sanction them, but this administration doesn't want to, because in a conflict between the Palestinians and Israel, this administration has decided that you're for the Palestinians and against Israel. Recently, you exercised the other half of that. This administration sanctioned Israelis. Those sanctions were imposed pursuant to a new executive order that imposes crippling sanctions on, quote, persons undermining peace, security, and stability in the West Bank. Critics have rightly said that this executive order and your imposition of sanctions is meant to target only Israeli Jews living in Judea and Samaria. The administration has claimed in your talking points that the sanctions are neutral. So if it's neutral, it ought to be pretty simple to answer this question. The Palestinian Authority gives hundreds of millions of dollars to terrorists who murder Jews. These are pay-to-slay payments, which they call martyrs' funds. How many sanctions have you imposed on the Palestinian Authority or Palestinian officials for paying for the murder of Jews?
Thank you for that question, Senator. The program that you just referenced has been very recently established. There's been one round of sanctions imposed under that program. I can't preview future action.
All on Jews?
The first round did, the targets were all Israeli. Yes.
Well, and clearly in the wake of October 7th, you're looking at Hamas terrorists who murder 1,200 people, who rape women, who murder children. And I'll tell you, it was sickening. A number of us sat here. The chairman of this committee arranged for us to listen to stories of the horrors that came on. Why does the Biden administration look at that and say, clearly what we need to do is sanction Israeli Jews, but we don't sanction Hamas. We don't sanction Hamas terrorists for using human shields, and you don't sanction the Palestinian Authority for essentially offering rewards for the murder of civilians. Why not?
Senator, President Biden and the administration have been very clear that the United States stands behind Israel's right to defend itself against these attacks.
Okay.
We also have imposed...
Except for the fact that you are only sanctioning our friends and you're not sanctioning our enemies. All right, my time has expired, but I want to ask one last thing. You've screwed up sanctions in the Middle East. You've screwed up sanctions in Latin America, which could be an entire other round of questioning. But let me end with this. Screwing up sanctions also caused the war in Ukraine. If you knew in 2021 that allowing Nord Stream 2 to be physically completed would convince Vladimir Putin that he was able to destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure and then invade Ukraine, would you still have made the same decisions you made then about Nord Stream 2 to give Putin a multi-billion-dollar gift and an invitation to invade Ukraine?
Thank you, Senator. When Russia began that invasion, they had already heard from the president, standing next to German Chancellor Scholz, that if Russia invaded, Nord Stream 2 would be no more. And Chancellor Scholz said that there was no disagreement.
If Russia so did that work? I find your answer astonishing.
Well, Nord Stream 2 is no more.
Are you claiming responsibility for that?
No.
You'll make news if you're saying that.
No.
I'm not aware of that. Well, then that can't be your answer. If that's not what you're saying, you smirk and say Nord Stream 2 is no more, but your gift, refusing to enforce the sanctions on Nord Stream 2, caused the invasion. My question, which you didn't answer, if you knew then what you know now, would you still have given that gift to Putin and started the war?
Senator, the decision that we had to make in 2021 was a pipeline that was almost complete. The Secretary has been clear.
Are you going to answer the question? Would you have made the same decision knowing what you know now, yes or no?
The decision that we had to make at that time was based on the facts and realities available at that time.
It was staggeringly wrong. All of us told you it was staggeringly wrong. You didn't listen to us, and it caused the war because you put ideology above the interest of America and above the interest of our allies.
In a heated exchange, Ted Cruz sharply questioned Erik Woodhouse, nominee to lead sanctions coordination, accusing the Biden administration of failing to sanction Hamas for using human shields while targeting Israeli individuals in the West Bank. Cruz argued that sanctions must be applied consistently, especially under laws mandating penalties against terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. Woodhouse defended the administration's broader sanctions record, but could not provide specific numbers when pressed. The confrontation escalated when Cruz turned to the 2021 decision surrounding Nord Stream 2, the Russian gas pipeline to Europe, suggesting that failing to fully enforce sanctions emboldened Vladimir Putin ahead of the invasion of Ukraine. At the heart of this dispute is a larger debate over how economic sanctions shape global conflicts, whether they deter aggression or unintentionally signal weakness. Sanctions are one of the most powerful non-military tools the United States has, but their credibility depends on consistency and strategic clarity. If you want deeper analysis on how these policy decisions ripple across the Middle East and Europe, follow for more breakdowns that connect the dots.